Are we having fun yet?
People, listeners, friends, you've found your mercy here. Search no more because we love you just the way you are. We love you like you are. Don't change. We're the Alabama Takes Pop Culture Podcast, and we call ourselves Taking It Down. I still don't know if that's a good name or not. Anyway, today on the
It's too late. The ship has sailed, man.
Yeah, I mean, we're 108 episodes in. Anyway, today on the podcast, here's what we're going to talk about in the order in which we'll talk about it, I suppose. We'll throw out some thoughts around the fifth episode of Euphoria. Then we'll discuss the Guillermo del Toro film Nightmare Alley, which is now streaming on HBO Max if you missed it in the theaters last year. Lastly, we'll put some final thoughts on the Book of Boba Fett, as that show has come to its season conclusion, and I doubt it's its series conclusion. It didn't seem like it. Let me introduce you to the neighbors who helped me accomplish these great feats of strength. On one side of me, I've got Adam Morrow, and on the other side, I've got Donovan Reinwald.
The noisy neighbors. Great to be here.
It's an honor to be here, Blaine.
I can't believe that you revealed the trick, Blaine, last week, that you cut out that space of silence in the editing process. It was kind of a letdown.
Well, when I'm listening to podcasts, I don't like, if I'm trying to find a segment and I'm hitting the 30-second button, I don't like moments of silence. It freaks me out. We at the site are very sad about the recent passing of DC Moon, and I personally admired him a lot. I just start there and say that he was just a legendary guy in Tuscaloosa and Alabama music, if not beyond. And I've written this, I think, on a couple of our social media accounts, that if nothing else, if you couldn't take anything else away from DC Moon, it's that it's really, really cool. People will love you if you just are yourself. If you just like, hey, this is what I dig, this is what I'm into, and I'm gonna still dig and be into that for as long as I live. Tough to hear about him, man. It's really sad. I think his music will live, as long as music lives. Okay, let's transition out of that, though. We get today's podcast done and edited so we can watch the Soups Bowl. That's what we're going to try to do today, aren't we?
Yeah. I got a lot of money riding on that game.
Give or take, what are we saying, hundreds?
Are we saying hundreds? Blaine, I'm going to have to move to Canada.
The mob will be after Donovan. I really hate that they didn't fire Brian Harsin.
Are we back on that? I like how you you just needed to talk about football tangentially to get to what you actually wanted to talk about.
No, I'm gonna make a real quick joke that I hate that they didn't fire Brian Harsin, because I feel like Donovan could have stepped in for at least a year or the summer until they got their feet under them.
If his job so far seems to be to lose coaches and alienate players, yeah, I can do that. Jeez.
I don't know that you would alienate players. See, that's what I'm saying. You would be a step above. You would not alienate anyone. You're a real kind guy. So, people would like you. Now, coaching.
Look, I think it's all about what you retain growing up. And I watched a lot of football with my dad. And for some reason, he'd be like, yep, that's a whatever play. And for some reason, I'd just be like, ball thrown. Like, I don't know, like big man go fast.
Please tell me you're still like this. Please tell me you don't even know what,
Oh, no, I'm really like this.
But yet you know so much about football when you come to the show on Sundays. You've watched so much.
I love to watch it, but I don't have that. There's a strategic depth to it that I don't really get.
Yes.
And when I watch it with people who get that strategic depth, it's just so fun for me.
In college, he was the master of, we would be in talking to a bunch of dudes or something, and they're kind of like, attempting to make these points. And Donovan would usually go into a Saturday or a Sunday for watching the NFL with one or two catchphrases ready. For instance, they've really got to watch the play action pass in this situation, and then just not say anything for a long time. But he would say it at the right time, and then just kind of bow out. It was great. It was artful.
They got to keep it on the ground. You got to keep in mind it's a rebuilding year.
He could come up with those big themes like that. It was great. What a fun week in college football to Blaine, you texted during the Alabama basketball game and said, "Did y'all see Harsin?" Which was very
Yeah,
funny, but
he was at the
yeah,
Auburn.
but then I texted back, "Are you watching Bama?" And you just said no. So your level of like buy-in and engagement with the Harsin Auburn drama was very high, but the actual sport being
It's very
played
high.
very low. It was great.
I don't have SEC network, so
Oh,
that's
okay.
why
That's a
Okay.
shame. That was a fun little game.
I didn't follow up on that text. Yeah, I don't have SEC. Yeah,
It's just I could get the pulse of the Harsin situation was never far from my texting ability. Blaine knew what was going on.
Yeah.
It was a hilarious week.
yeah.
What's the real reason they're keeping him? Is it because they put out too much cat food for him and they're like, well, spent all this cat food money. Guess we're gonna have, like he's the stray cat that they took in, and it's like, oh, we spent all this money. Guess we got him for a while.
I'm so fascinated that he's a quote unquote jerk because I want to know how. How so? But all I keep reading in articles are he's a jerk. He's a jerk to players. He's like, tell me, what does he do? There's no way he's more of a jerk than like a Mike Leach back at Texas Tech kind of thing, right?
I mean, they all seem like a certain level of asshole, right? I mean, you don't think
You
of
gotta
the
be.
coach as like your buddy.
It's a weird twist when, as it turns out, the nicest guy in football to players and stuff is actually Nick Saban.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The most loving guy. Yeah, there you go. Well, yeah, I'd like to resurrect, fitting word, our bit called The Lord's Coming Back Real Soon. Here's where I am with this. Can you believe we've reached a point in the zeitgeist where we have ads for the ads that are going to air on the Super Bowl? Like you have a commercial for the commercial? Is that not the strangest shit in our consumerist culture now?
Can I believe it? Yeah, I can believe just about anything.
Well, yeah, of course you can believe it. And I'll be scrolling social media, and I think to myself, oh, I better scroll past that particular ad because I'll watch it during the Super Bowl, and I want to be excited then.
I don't want to get spoiled.
Yeah, I don't want to get as spoiled on this Pepsi commercial. What the fuck is wrong with me?
That's a question for you.
Yeah, I guess so. No segue here, but there's other than we may not have enough time. New Big Thief album. That seemed to get a lot of hoopla and building up to it. I haven't had a chance to listen to it. Are either of you guys fans?
I'm a huge Big Thief fan.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, this one's supposed to be what, a double album?
It's like 20 songs.
It really.
Yeah. They stacked them up. And as you read about it, I gotta be honest, I am not like always a double album fan. I kind of prefer the
Same here.
keep it concise, keep it to two sides of a record. Obviously, there's exceptions to that rule that I really love, but like it's kind of daunting to think like this new record's out today. I need to dedicate for something that operates on the level that they have in the past and the impact that they've had on me. I need to give it its due, but it's also a bit of a time commitment. I don't want to just like flippantly
Yeah, it
put
is.
it on while I'm driving around town.
I think that's what happened to me. I didn't want to flippantly put it on, so I didn't even listen to it at all. But listeners, if you have listened to it, let us know what you think. Adam, you did mention on your Instagram story, if not your whole Instagram post, John Calvin Abney released. Did he release a single or his whole album?
It's a single that's an announcement for an album that won't come out until August.
Okay, so I listened to the single then.
It's a good time. I like that
It
single
was
a lot.
chill.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
He's-
nice.
He's got a really great vibe.
And you know him, right?
Yeah, we have a funny, we've only met in person a time or two. Like we crossed paths at Druid City and didn't really know who each other were. And then I was playing with John and he was playing with John Moreland right before us at a festival. And we crossed paths then. And then now we have both played, that was like years ago. And now we have both played guitar with Lee. And it's just a funny, like we keep the universe, our little musical universe keeps pushing us together. There's been threats to do a 3-guitar attack Glory Fire show one of these days. That'd be a good time.
He seems like a cool cat. Is he pretty cool?
And definitely one of the good guys, for
All
sure.
right. Y'all go listen to John Calvin Abney's tease of his new album. I really like the song. I thought it was real chill, I don't know, it's pleasant. pleasant little song. I know. So yeah, you can find him online everywhere, wherever you find things online. So yeah.
Well, and I'll say too about the Big Thief record. I mean, I did do a listen through and really enjoyed it. I'm excited to hear you guys' opinion on it because it is a pretty serious departure from what they've done in the past, and kind of like we talked about them being a more serious band that you kind of have to sit with. Part of it is silly in like a Piggies kind of way, like some of what maybe consider like a throwaway Beatles song or something. But the process of them making it, they made it. The drummer produced it, and they made it at 4 different studios with 4 different engineers, and like slowly wove together this record. So I would do a little reading on it. I thought the Pitchfork review of it was really insightful. I know we have mixed opinions on that website at times, but when they get the right writer and the right record, they knock it out of the park.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was
What'd they give it?
Like a 9.0 and a Best in Music.
Whoa.
So it was highly praised, but it's yeah. I did want to get that in. It's an interesting record.
Cool. We might talk about it a little bit more next week then, once we've all had it under our belts for a week. A note to our listeners about this upcoming segment. It's our Euphoria talk. I was doing a thing where I would just kind of talk about a thematic element based on the episode, but Adam is now caught up with me. So going forward, we're going to be spoiling the episode we're discussing, but we record on Sunday afternoons, and a new Euphoria will come on today after we've wrapped and edited and ate all our Soups Bowl food festival stuff. So we're technically if you listen to us on Tuesday or Wednesday or whenever, we're technically an episode behind. So maybe it's not too horribly spoiler. Let's talk about the massive and explosive 5th episode where Rue reenacts Homer's Odyssey.
What an episode for me to catch up on. And if we're going to talk about one a little more in depth, I mean, this one will be good for a long time. And I don't think you have to listen to this week of.
Okay, I'm going to start there then, Adam. One of my mental notes was you almost could watch this one unto itself. And I may need to rearrange my Twitter feed, revise it, because all I saw last Monday and Tuesday on Twitter was an uproar of people tweeting at critics decrying the idea of a movie versus an episode. And they started throwing around this German word, Gesamtkunstwerk, which I think means a work unto itself, or a work of art that it like stands on its own or something. I don't give a shit about that conversation.
I saw your notes and had to hit Wikipedia. Yeah, that seems like as good a summation as I could do on our Germanic language there.
It's meaningless to me, this conversation, because this is obviously a television show. I don't have the bandwidth to really care about anything beyond what's presented to me on the screen and try to break that down and think deeply as I can on it. But I do think that this episode could be given to someone who may have their doubts on Euphoria. Like, if you're kind of sort of like, I don't know if I'll ever watch this show, if you just take this one and give it to them, I almost think you could be, it's almost one you could not spoil a bunch of stuff, but yet you could watch, and it still gives you a sense of what this show is at its best moments, if they're willing to check out an hour-long episode.
I agree with that, and it seems like one that the show has been building towards, not just this season, but last season. This much of it's always been a show that excelled at making you feel what the characters are feeling. We talked about just the wonderful cinematography and mood of the show and the soundtrack and all this stuff. But this one, I think you're going to bring up Breaking Bad later, and I ended the episode thinking this is the most intense watching experience that I think I've had since Breaking Bad was on air. Just that sense of impending doom and dread, and I guess we'll be spoilery.
Yeah, let's do it. And if Donovan, if you ducked out, I would not blame you for this.
Okay.
Donovan literally took his headphones off, but I don't know. If you're really interested in this show, this is the moment to duck out if you haven't watched it, for real, for our listeners.
If she had died in this episode, it would not have surprised me. It would have going into it, but like 10 minutes in, I was like, they could kill her this episode. It would be insane to do because it's not only the star of the show, but the biggest star, the biggest name in the show. But it would serve the story super well, which they seem pretty interested in. It was wild. It was great. It had moments of the Breaking Bad thing. It had moments of like the True Detective episode with the tracking shot. It kind of just took you to a really dark, claustrophobic place.
Yes, claustrophobic is so good. I'm glad you thought of that word. I used to do these little Euphoria segments on a loose idea I found in the show and try to pull at that string a little and see what I thought without spoiling. And this episode was so tense and dangerous and chilling to me that I don't think I could be vague about it. And I briefly, vaguely mentioned the character played by Martha Kelly a couple of episodes back. She scares the hell out of me.
Yeah.
And is the total polar opposite of the character she plays on Baskets, which is how I came to know her. If last week I was praising editing in Euphoria, this week I've got to commend the casting director because that's a brave, smart choice to put her in that role. Very curious what her character looks like on paper before they cast it, because how do you land on her? And it's so insightful to see through some of the other stuff she's done. She's also a comedian, I think. To see the other stuff she's done and say, no, she's going to chill people to the bone as this calm, don't give a shit kind of mom teacher person. It's just scary.
I mean, her warning to Rue when she takes the $10,000 bag of drugs was just, I mean, that's the scariest thing that's happened in the show so far.
Right. And she tells Rue in this episode, she tells her she doesn't have pills, but then you see her, she opens her big bag of drugs and she's got pills.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she's purposefully poking Rue several times instead of just giving her the morphine once, so that Rue will look, I guess, like an addict, or more so like an addict, right?
Her waking up and looking at her arm with regret and terror. Just the whole thing was something else. And the episode ended not long after that at a really compelling spot. You know, the tension of starting with a mom and ending with her mom, and getting to see that actress. I watched the after show bit where she said this is kind of the first time that she's gotten to leave their home. You know, she interacted with the cast at large a bit more. That was an interesting point that she made. But I don't know, just to go from that, you called her the dealer, the kind of the cold motherly teacher figure in a way, but to see her leave that artificial reality and end up back at home with her mom saying, who's been up all night, welcoming her back, it was just kind of overwhelming. I don't know what more to say about how they polish that episode off.
It's one of those episodes where it's so well done, I almost can't analyze it other than just to tell you to watch it and say, this is what television can do and how good it can be. This is one I thought would come at the end of the season. So I'd say the writers, you know, I did mention a couple of weeks ago that the writers were getting close to an edge, and it's going to be interesting to see if they can write their way away from that edge. And it comes in the 5th episode. And that, you know, the show took chances on how do you write reconciliation with Rue, Elliot, Jules, Maddie, Nate, and Cassie? And that's something they're going to have to tackle.
Well, I thought that, you know, they have already, the show begins in a post this kind of event reality for Rue, right? Like, Lexi is shown to have been super upset by what happened. Some of the other ones are a little bit more casual about Rue's overdose. But, you know, I mean, she did scorch the earth on her trip through, her night through hell. I don't know how they, you know, not only did she dig herself a hole, but she burned every bridge between other characters that was available to her.
Yes. We mentioned Breaking Bad, and I'll clarify that I thought it was Breaking Bad in the sense that I bet when they were in the writer's room, they said, how far can we take this? How much of a corner can we push her in? How is she going to get out? And so there was a bit of a homage to Breaking Bad style of writing. I bet that was brought up with the problems Rue faced here.
It had to have been. And it, you know, she ends up in well, it's not a ridiculous place when this is something that human beings go through. But when you think about Breaking Bad, they convinced us that Walt went from this I mean, this is undermined when you really think about it, but this high school teacher with cancer who needs money, who thinks, I know what I'll do. I'll start dealing meth or cooking meth, and becomes what he becomes, and slowly lulls you into buying every one of those decisions, so that by the end he is the one who knocks, and you're like, yeah, of course he is. And I thought this did this really well in microcosm of where she is at the beginning to the end. You believe every decision that she's made, and you understand it's justified is a weird word, justified in a depraved, depressing, dark way, but everything that she does has its reason. And I think for people on the outside looking in, that's probably a pretty, it's easy to judge the end product and not see how that happened. I'd be interested to know the writing staff's relationship with addiction.
Seems realistic. Her and Zendaya's performance here felt as realistic as could be. She was the primary focus. She had to carry this whole episode. You know, that thing with her yawning, that's a realistic component of withdrawal from opiates, from what I understand. That reveal of Jules and Elliot being in her house felt realistic too.
When that scene started, when she's having the argument with her mom and her sister gets involved and it gets brutally physical, and it was so hard to watch. You know, sometimes you think in those moments when it's not well done, you're thinking, well, this is like their push for critical acclaim or an award or any of these kind of things where, you know, you see people and they're acting. Capital A, I'm act, that kind of thing. But the way that scene developed, the reveal of her friends in the living room, hearing this whole thing, again, I don't really know what more to say than just it is what it is. It was devastating. Everybody involved gave an incredible performance.
I bet a lot of people have been through this, even on a smaller scale, where maybe you got caught drinking as a 17-year-old and then you find out it was your friends who told your parents because they wanted you to be a little bit more safe or something. You know, that's definitely happened to me. That's happened to me, something similar. All right, so I can't recommend this show enough. They're hitting strides that other shows, I won't compare it to other shows. They're just hitting some excellent strides. So Euphoria, it's peaking. Hopefully it can maintain that. What we're going to do is we're going to take a break, and on the other side, we're going to talk a couple of things. We'll talk Nightmare Alley and Book of Boba Fett finale. Stay with us. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll all three admit this is one of the best podcasts about television that you can listen to these days. It took us right around 100 episodes, but we have found our groove, and we believe you'll want to subscribe to us so that you don't miss an episode every Tuesday. The great news is that all our social media accounts for the Alabama Take lets you know what we'll be covering on Taking It Down that week, so you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube. A lot of those accounts overlap with information, so if you're on one or you only use one, find us and let us know what you're up to, and you're covered. If you want, drop us some stars on your podcast app, give us a rating, and we'll welcome new listeners by the dozens. So you can help by sharing us, reviewing us, rating us, all of that. Recently on the AlabamaTake.com, we have another new book review from our resident book critic Laura, who gives her thoughts on These Violent Delights. Plus, our music writer Corey broke down how older bands may deserve your attention as she soaked in the new Spoon album that was released Friday. Go find both of those and this podcast and our other endeavors too on thealabamatake.com. Let's get back to Adam and Donovan in this episode of our show. I've got a nice segue built in, I think, maybe. Let's talk a little bit of Oscars, starting with this question. I suppose it's COVID related, but have these last 2 years of the Academy Award nominees seemed underwhelming to you guys?
Part of it is just, I've been thinking about that too. There's so many that I haven't seen and haven't had an opportunity to see. Like this year, Belfast, Coda, Don't Look Up. Sorry, not Don't Look Up. I did have an opportunity to see that. I just haven't watched it. Drive My Car is what I meant to say. Licorice Pizza, haven't had a chance to see. And I think that is COVID related where you have these things with like micro releases or maybe it's exacerbating a trend that was already there. This year wasn't too, when I saw Power of the Dog, Lead, I thought, well, that's pretty cool. Some other stuff was pretty, I'm a big Coen Brothers fan, so the Coen brother getting a nod for getting or the Macbeth getting some love, I think is cool. I haven't seen it yet, but I assume it's great.
Me either.
So this one, the last time we did a real Oscars watch was in 2019, and you and I, this was when I think we did it around the time we did our 1917 episode. And you and I had seen most of the movies, and we were actually able to say something about them. And looking at this slate, I can't say anything about most of them.
There's about half of them I think I could talk about. Is Dune worthy of a Best Picture nomination? Dune. As I call it, Dune.
Do I think it was the best movie that came out this year? No. Did I enjoy it a lot and think it was fun? Yeah, I enjoyed it. I am a little surprised it ended up in Best Picture category, but that may be, the way the voting works now has thrown up some surprises.
They're trying to cram in some of those big money-making pictures, obviously, into the Best Picture. Now they've expanded it to, 9 or 10 is the possibility. They don't always do 9 or 10.
I think 10 is now the cap, yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm underwhelmed. I was underwhelmed last year. Adam, you got a kick out of how the Oscars played out last year. Like they were in a subway tunnel or something?
In a subway tunnel.
Am I not remembering this right? Didn't the Oscars do weird shit last year? They were in a subway, Blaine. A subway to get sandwiches.
No, I remember Adam being really impressed by the directing. It was directed by like Steven Soderbergh or someone.
They did it in like a ballroom kind of place, right? Like it was a much smaller venue that. I remember thinking like this is there's a little bit of a dance routine going on with keeping the excitement up, and they'd clearly plotted some cutesy little interplay between the folks who were there. I think back to the Emmys this year, we're kind of, watching Ted Lasso clean up, and it's a small enough space that you see them just getting progressively drunker and having a good time. And then Conan in the back disrupting everything. COVID season has created some unique opportunities for the award show, I do think.
Yeah, well, that takes us to that Best Picture category. One of the movies in it is Nightmare Alley, which we serendipitously decided to talk about last weekend, or for this week. Nightmare Alley is director and writer Guillermo del Toro's recent movie. It's a remake of a 1947 film. Have you seen that one, Donovan?
No, I have not. I wish I had, because TCM played it about a month ago, but I haven't sat down and watched it.
Very interested to hear what the differences are between this one and the old one. And I think that film was based off of a novel of the same name. The 2022 film stars Bradley Cooper as Stanton Carlyle. And the movie's basically about how he makes some bad decisions and ends up in a sort of downfall. And it's nominated for Best Picture. So if you don't want to be spoiled anymore, let us get a couple of things out if you want to use our judgment to decide on watching it or not, and then we'll draw a line in the sand on spoilers. Adam, how'd you feel about Nightmare Alley?
I thought it was a really strong start, a pretty interesting premise. I think, you find out pretty early on that you're dealing with the world of a carnival at times, and general sleight of hand, and maybe the classic American, not like huckster or con man, but kind of.
Yeah, kind of.
And then it progresses from there. I think it could have been, it clocks in about 2.5 hours, and it probably could have been about 20 minutes shorter. We can get into why I think that is as we progress, but I thought the strong outweighed the burdened on the whole. And pretty good movie.
God help me, I liked it.
Yeah.
I'd agree with Adam. It could have probably been about 20 minutes shorter. I'm not 100% sure which 20 minutes I would cut. Beginning, and I think this is a little bit intentional, the beginning felt a little bit separate from with the carnival scenes. It felt really separate from the rest of the movie, but I think that is being done on purpose. And if you like, when I think of a Del Toro movie, what kind of pops into my head is it's going to be kind of lush, and there's real craft behind it. And this one doesn't disappoint there. I forget. I was looking up at the RogerEbert.com review of this a little earlier, and they noted that he's the camera guy that he's working with. He's worked with before. Maybe I can pull his name really quickly, because I felt like he did a really good. That on the technical level, it works really, really well.
Yeah, it never felt. You're dealing with a world of the Ferris wheel you see early on, and these kind of like Americana views and old tarot and all that kind of stuff. But it never felt like you were in a caricature of these things. You kind of were, but it wasn't. Lesser movies and directors and cinematographers can't pull that off to the level that I thought they really aced the. This doesn't feel like put on, you know.
I was going to say the cinematographer's name is Dan Lauston. He's worked with Del Toro before, most notably on The Shape of Water, which won Best Picture. Not my favorite or I think the strongest of his work, but it does look good. And then Crimson Peak, which is very, very good.
The fish fucking movie.
The fish fucking movie. Yeah, well, the Crimson Peak's the sister fucking movie, so.
Even better. If given a choice... No, I'm kidding. Adam talked about how it never felt like a caricature. I will say that it did, but I was perfectly okay with that. I liked this movie. I really did. We often simplify some of what we talk about here and say, ye old phone test. Not once did I pick up my phone. Mm-hmm. And that's 2.5 hours of not picking up your phone. I did pause it to go to the bathroom, but I didn't, which is... Listeners may relate to this. If I pause a movie or a show and I get up and go to the bathroom or fix a drink or whatever, and I come back, I always pick up my phone and I check a few things. But I didn't this time. I just wanted to dive back in. It does immerse you in a world. Adam says it wasn't a caricature. There were times where I think it kind of was, but I think that's a purposeful decision. I liked it. Let's get into specifics. Did indulge. You guys want to get into some specifics and draw a spoiler alert here?
I was going to say about the caricature point, it did indulge in a bit of like genre play, I thought. You kind of knew some of the beats that were going to be hit, some of the tones that were going to be painted with. I just didn't think the specifics visually, like I was along for the ride, you know? It didn't feel plastic in any way.
Yeah.
I got you.
That I really loved, the carnival itself. At what Adam just said about not feeling plastic in any way. It felt very tactile. Possibly for lack of a better word. And you talked about being immersed. I think the whole movie was kind of exercise in immersion as you get drawn in, just like what's his name, Stan gets drawn in, right? So it's all about kind of there's lots of spirals in this movie. The Ferris wheel is going, all that kind of stuff, and you kind of get sucked in just the same way he gets sucked in. And I mean, at least for me, watching this movie, they keep saying over and over, don't do the spook show, but there's kind of a fascination in watching it. You kind of want to see how far he can go and how much can he get away with. And then, and then it all kind of 100%, and then it all kind of comes crashing down.
I couldn't stop thinking about Don Draper the whole time. Like, this is a Don Draper on a slightly different, not all that different, really. I mean, the ad world is maybe not all that far removed from this vein of American cultural history. But, the guy, kind of the faceless guy on the bus, headed off to hopefully better fortune. I mean, that's a well-mined field for film and art in general and storytelling in general. But yeah, I'm with Donovan. The way that it was exploited, the way that they used people on the fringe to say things about American culture at large, the way they tiptoed around, you're believing, we can get into maybe the specifics later. You kind of don't know if something supernatural is going to happen the whole time.
That's true.
Like, they leave that door open just enough that maybe it is real, and maybe he's accidentally going to hit on something in the show. He's warned about that. If you start believing your own, get high on your own product, it becomes dangerous.
I kept wondering, is this son of a bitch gonna actually do something that other humans can't do? Is he actually going to tap into that?
Yeah.
I love how they play with that notion. Del Toro does a good job of knowing you have seen movies.
Yes.
And
yes,
you've
does.
seen movies.
I was going to say, he's playing with his own reputation.
A little bit, I think, maybe. Hey. Now, Donovan, I was excited to get to do this movie with you, Donovan, because you're like a really big Guillermo del Toro fan, right?
Yeah.
Am I wrong in my?
I'd say I'm a pretty big Del Toro fan.
I always assumed you were from just the way you talked about his movies. What is it you tend to like about his movies? And what does this movie have of those things?
Sometimes, honestly, sometimes one of the things that makes me like Del Toro is it feels like he's making a movie just for me. Like, set a weird, fucked up fairy tale in the middle of the Spanish Civil War. Yeah, sure, okay. That's just for me.
Yeah.
Give me my giant robots fighting aliens movie. Okay, that's just for me. But so that's part of it is just like he scratches an itch. But I think that the thing that draws me to his movies over and over is the craft behind them. You said he knows that you've seen movies before, and he's making movies for people who have seen movies. Usually, not always, but usually he does a good job. He's fascinated by monsters, right? He's fascinated, and usually monsters and outsiders, and usually he does a pretty good job of not falling into cliche, but giving you a monster or a ghost or something that really does serve as a metaphor for whatever he's trying to get at. I would say with this one, it was kind of the overall craftsmanship of it that just impressed me. And he's fascinated with his characters, I think, a little, so that you're fascinated too.
Yeah.
This one was another good one.
I really am going to expose myself here. This may be the first Guillermo del Toro movie I've seen.
Okay.
I think. Unless there's something
You didn't see Pan's Labyrinth?
No, I didn't. Yeah. I always wanted to, but I didn't.
That one is very good. Crimson Peak is very good. Devil's Backbone is very good. And Kronos is very good. And he what am I going to say? I don't know. He always just has these worlds that it feels like you could step into. But on top of that, it's not just it never feels like he's just doing a hollow exercise where there's more maybe style than substance. Like there's actually something there. And sometimes it boils down to, man was the real monster the whole time. But
right. And that was this one.
Yeah.
I always thought he put fish fucking in every movie. I kept waiting for a fish to fuck. So visuals were outstanding here, and I do like when a director is very aware of using visuals as part of the story or part of the extra layer. What'd you guys make of rain and then later snow? He uses precipitation here.
Yeah.
The whole time.
Yes.
It gave it a very noir feel, just because the weather makes no sense, right? Like it would never rain and snow as much as it does.
Not in Depression era, no.
No, but I loved the way that it set up the lighting.
Oh yeah,
because the raining and the snow always every time he's in, what's her name, Lilith, the psychologist's office, Dr. Lilith's office. It's snowing.
Right.
And,
very symbolic name.
Yeah, and that lets him use that really gray, faded out light that brings out the interiors of the office even more, because you've got the lamps on and all that kind of stuff. It was I think I might be a little over enthusiastic about it. But I think you could really look at this and look at what's happening with the colors and the way that the lighting is used and really get a lot out of it.
The structure reminded me a bit of this stretch of movies that happened in the mid-2000s, like The Illusionist, and what was the other one that was...
Right.
Oh, The Prestige.
The Prestige.
Yeah.
It kind of felt like
I thought about that a lot.
In the vein of those, in that I thought that era, it's odd when eras have like a lot of the same thematic elements for no seeming reason. You know, like all Oscars have the Best Picture having like multiple things about the same topic, whatever. But it kind of was a callback to that. Really, you don't look at your phone. It's really compelling, and the story is super tight. And you know the whole time that it's going to be, it does sprawl a bit, but kind of. I mean, even the outdoor scenes are usually in the narrow passageways of this traveling carnival, or in the tents, or in the hyper-organized space of that garden once he gets there. But most of it's indoors. The cast is big, but never feels like you're never in the room with that many people. It felt very, the paths are defined, this story, and it ends up being Donovan talked about kind of the idea of spirals or circles. It ends up being one of those kind of stories.
Yeah. You know, even at the point where he's, he never changes from the mark. He wants to be the guy in control. He wants to be the one who talks about other people as the mark. But as we learn more about him and kind of his father issues and that sort of thing, he never changes from the guy who just hates his old man and wants to run away.
I love that every scene had an actor that I really like, even in the small roles.
Yeah. I was wondering if we were going to talk about the acting at all, because I thought it was phenomenal.
I thought it was really good. Even Grendel's right-hand man is a great actor from the series Mindhunter, and I was just so thrilled to see him. What did you particularly like about the acting, Donovan? Other than it was great, I guess, right?
Other than it was great, I don't know if I could put too much on it. Other than saying I really enjoyed it. It felt like everyone was perfectly cast for their part. Cate Blanchett took something that could have easily been a parody of itself, and that femme fatale character, and made it menacing. Sex, you know, she's sexy, she's scary, she's she's threatening his manhood all at the same time, and she did a great job there. And I thought Bradley Cooper was really good too. He has to play that kind of mix of, well, Adam made a great nod earlier when thinking about Don Draper. He has to play that mix of like suave know-it-all and in over his head. They just had they had a cast perfectly suited to the roles they were in. It was even fun seeing old standbys like Ron Perlman get a chance to be Bruno the Strong Man and stuff like that.
How about that Oedipus-like ending? Were you happy with it? Because I saw a little bit of chatter online that some people didn't. The ending is what they were disappointed with.
Interesting, because the ending is telegraphed. So, the first words he speaks are to the geek.
Yes, it is.
I wish I'd noticed that on my own. I pulled that from a review I read.
Well, I noticed it because for the first couple of minutes, I kept thinking, okay, is Bradley Cooper a mute in this movie?
Right.
Is that what he's playing? Because he goes for a solid 5-7 minutes without saying a word until he tries to track down the escaped geek. You're right.
It's pretty clearly with Willem Dafoe. Sets it up early enough, and you kind of get the sense that where else is his life going to go but down a nightmare alley. I mean, it's called Nightmare Alley, right? So it's not it's not subtle about it.
You do wonder when he starts saying, when he hatches the escape plan, or not really escape, but we have to go on to bigger and better things. Like what is he talking about? What is, what has this skill set aside from conning people set you up for? Like how do you sustain success doing that. And it seemed to be asking that question. Like, this isn't,
Mm-hmm.
he isn't going to like turn the skill into being Don Draper. This is, as Donovan said, this is going to end pretty much one way. It can't end well. Another thing that kind of struck me about, it's towards the end, and it's something that keeps coming up, that I know I get to talk about Mad Men, and now I'm going to talk about Faulkner. It was very, so this is a great segment for me. It's very Sound and the Fury, almost Quentin-esque. The fact that he carries that watch the entire time, what he takes from his father is time, and he carries it to the end, and the ticking of the watch is amplified at one moment. He gives it away in exchange for booze, kind of in a moment of desperation. And the whole thing is that he can't, it's very early Freudian idea, right? That you can't ever overcome your father. You can't ever catch up to the experiences that existed before you did. You know, he can't ever really be defeated. So when they diagnose him with the trick early on and say, well, it's a watch, you had father, it's like all those, as one of y'all said, he never changed. Blaine, I think you said, he never changes past that moment. Really, he is always who that Mark is.
You posed the question, how much can you get away with the whole con thing? I'll point to another Don, and that's Don Trump. That's how far you can get. Let's switch into last on the menu, the Book of Boba Fett. The finale over on Disney Plus featured a lot of blasts of lasers and bangs of bombs and flying of jetpacks and monsters eating people. This show has it all. Is Grogu actually tolerable around Amy Sedaris' character?
That only you can answer that question, Blaine.
I'll say yes. I can tolerate him when Amy Sedaris is sort of being the surrogate for me, saying that's a stupid name and you know, you're a little goofy guy. I found it to be a good episode as far as being entertained and as far as elongated fight scenes tend to be.
Whew.
But I will say that a lot of this episode did not feel built up to correctly enough.
I would agree with that. A lot of it felt really anticlimactic. And I just felt like the episode itself was all over the place. I'm not sure I was entertained.
Oh wow, really?
The episode itself was so all over the place. Just with one, you know, I literally just watched it before we did this show, so it should be fresh in my mind, and I'm reaching for an example, but all I can think of is those stupid
mods.
Those stupid mods.
I knew it.
They're back, and they, you know, it feels like the show has an affection for them that it hasn't absolutely earned. Huh? And even the fight scenes itself were not. Some of them were a little not great. It was just a lot of, you know, kind of crouching behind something and shooting every once in a while. I was a little. We've seen cool, especially from Robert Rodriguez. We've seen really cool fight scenes in the Star Wars universe coming from him. This is supposed to be the, you know, this is the grand finale. Some parts were cool, right? Like when the Rancor came out, that was cool. When he King Konged, that was all fun. There was a lot of just, it felt weirdly static. A lot of it felt weirdly static.
To me, the stakes were never huge either. I never knew or understood if they were in danger as much as I should have.
So is spice space cocaine, and is it bad?
Yes and no.
And why the heck does Boba Fett care about the people of Mos Espa? And why can't, he's a crime lord, why can't he just, you know, grease some palms and let the spice run? I don't understand.
Goes back to his father. He just wanted the love of his father.
When Jango Fett handed him that watch right at the end.
You didn't see the watch?
I missed that part.
No, him riding the Rancor is a purposeful hearkening back to the holiday special cartoon bit in that. Have you guys ever seen the holiday special?
No. I've actually never seen the holiday special.
It's a mesmerizing waste of time.
That's what I've always heard.
Yeah, and then you get this cartoon bit, which I don't even remember that well, but Boba Fett's riding some sort of similar monster, dinosaur type figure. Donovan, I bet you're going to disagree with this, but I thought that the action covered up a few of the things that were wrong with this show in this episode because I was entertained.
What did it cut? Just because it didn't give you a chance to stop and say, what is actually going on here?
Yeah, that was mainly it.
Kind of like a roller coaster ride, an amusement park ride does.
Just the mild form of entertainment that it did.
Were you satisfied with the way Cad Bane went out? He seemed so cool. And then he just kind of fizzled out on us.
It did seem a little understated. Of course, his introduction was also too late in the series. He could have really been used earlier too. I think maybe the big problem with the show is that they want this to be just a part of The Mandalorian, and we didn't really know that was going to be the case coming in.
Yes.
Like they want this is just a chapter in the Mandalorian series.
Had they spent more time making it more coherent, because that's what it ended up being. I think Ming-Na Wen herself said, "Oh, it's Mandalorian 2.5," and I think had they made it a little bit more coherent, it might have worked. But they spend three good episodes making you think it's really about Boba Fett, and then 2 episodes where Boba Fett is my favorite episodes, where Boba Fett is pretty much completely jettisoned, and then the last one where Boba Fett doesn't even get the last shot. It's Baby Yoda and Mando in
an annoying scene.
Yeah.
This show could have been really good if they would have just dug their heels into the crime boss stuff.
Yes. It was what the show was sold to us as, and the show itself seems so disinterested in exploring any of that. And sometimes, like, they introduced the Hutt twins, right, at one point, and it's like, oh, okay, now we're going into it, and then all of a sudden they're gone. There never seemed to be any kind of, like, Boba Fett just kind of strolled in. I don't know, like he did nothing, and then he had a shootout at the end.
Little disappointing, but I can see why people are entertained by it. If you're a Star Wars fan, it's fine. As far as just having something on to watch every Wednesday evening. But just a huge disappointment if you're looking at it critically. The first Clone Wars movie was about Anakin and Obi-Wan trying to rescue Jabba the Hutt's son, and I haven't finished watching it. I've only watched the first 15, 20 minutes.
This would be, you're talking about the animated one?
Uh-huh. So I might need to watch the rest of it before I can make this statement, but curious as to why Jabba the Hutt's son's not trying to come in and lay ownership to the place. Maybe he gets killed in that.
I'm sure Wikipedia has you covered
I can look that up.
Account.
So was it entertaining? Visually, it's entertaining. I think that's what I'm wanting to say, is that visually it's entertaining. The jetpacks blasting off, the Kristan the Wookiee doing things. It looks like you're back in a Star Wars movie, and that's always decent, but it's just not enough.
Sometimes it did to me, and sometimes it really felt very, I don't know, underwhelming. Like it didn't scratch that Star Wars itch. And I'm not even talking about the story. I'm just talking about from the level of the visuals.
Oh,
at least this last episode.
I'm not satisfied with this. I'm just trying to look at it from the point of view of, well, I'll shout out Corey Hanna, who does work with the Alabama Tape. He really liked it, and I'm trying to look at it through somebody's eyes who liked it, and I can see how it's quite entertaining, and that it did things that you hoped would come up in some Star Wars things. What's Luke up to now that the Empire's fallen, and it kind of got into that a little bit more. I can see why someone would enjoy this coming on every Wednesday, but looking at it with a deeply critical eyes, I try to do a lot.
It felt like it was somehow, despite having one creative team, it felt like it had 3 or 4 people.
That's true. That is
different
true.
people working on it. I think it was one of the Ringer writers made a joke about, like, do we need to be now that the powers that be are apparently completely happy to change the entire premise of a show midway through. What does this mean for Moon Knight?
Oh, wow. Good question. That's the next big Disney Plus show coming out in late March.
You thought it was going to be Moon Knight. Turns out, hope you wanted more Hawkeye.
Yeah, exactly. Could be the case. Well, that's what we got for you this week. May our podcast be a blessing to your life. What we'll do is we'll let you know what we're covering in next week's episode via socials, and you'll hear from us every Tuesday. I think right now we're debating some discussion on the HBO Max 4-episode thriller, The Girl Before. We might talk about that Big Thief album. So we'll see. Just follow us online, and we'll try to keep you as updated as we can. We'll talk to everybody later.